Today on Florida Sportsman, Project Dreamboat. The team at Wildfire Marine begins work on a 23-foot Seacraft with some major wiring issues.
It was actually the worst rigging job I've ever seen in my life.
L&H makes progress on the all-new 43 walkaround, fabricating custom parts for the build.
Everything's starting to come together. It's still quite a construction zone, but we're really pleased with the way it's moving along.
George LaBonte joins Chris Fischetti aboard his custom 22-foot Pathfinder.
With a few simple detail changes, Chris took this older 2002 kind of dated looking Pathfinder and brought it into 2020 and made it look like a new boat.
And the 25-foot Contender at TRB is finalized and put to the test.
This is possibly one of the nicest 25 Contenders out there at the moment.
All coming up on Florida Sportsman, Project Dreamboat. Join us as we follow one-off builds to all-out restorations in Stuart, Florida's Dreamboat District, home to some of the best custom boat builders in the world. From modest to over-the-top, industry experts from the district's premier facilities show how it's done. Fiberglass repair, custom paintwork, engine rigging, electronics installations, and more. And boating editor George LaBonte shares the stories of boaters who have already turned their dreams into reality. This is Florida Sportsman Project Dreamboat.
Here at Wildfire Marine, we've got a customer who brought in a newer Seacraft. Him and his wife had taken the boat out, and his wife spotted some smoke coming from the deck. Luckily, he was smart enough to he popped the cover off and started separating all the wires, shut everything down, and kind of averted a pretty good disaster that was waiting to happen here. The wire that had burned when he had pulled the wires apart, the wire had settled down on top of a battery cable. Just below the battery cable, had that wire not landed on the cable, it would have landed on his primer ball. And also another thing that we noticed, that primer ball dried up and cracked, or you got a split in any of the lines, it would siphon the entire fuel tank into the bilge. It's quite obvious that this wasn't going to be just a rewire job for Debbie. It was going to take a team effort on both of us because there was a lot of work. Just getting the wires out was going to be a big chore.
When I opened the door and I looked, the first thing I seen was my batteries, and then I seen my water tank. I couldn't believe that they actually put a battery on top of a washdown tank. It wasn't even secured. It was just floating. And then the battery, it was on the floor, only had one screw in it. It was, I mean, it was an accident waiting to happen. They would have had more than just smoke coming out of their bilge.
Access to this console was really tough, especially with the battery sitting right in front of the door on top of a water tank. Luckily, we found out that behind the cushion on the front of the console was a tackle storage area. So by removing that, we had a pretty good access to the whole front part of the console. One of the other things we do is we take the side doors off. You don't gain a lot more access, but you don't have to fight with the door banging around on you. And also, usually it's a lot less bloody because most of those doors are just screwed on. And when you reach behind to pull out some wires or anything else, it's inevitable your elbow's going to hit one of those screws protruding through the inside. So pull all that stuff all out, you got a nice clean opening to work with, and makes life a lot easier. We got another helper with us today on the boat, my granddaughter Carlissa. Having Carlissa on a boat's a little bit more of a challenge because she is a kid, and they love to, I mean, they're inquisitive. You turn around and her head's right by you, and I swear one of these days she's going to be able to do our job because she's just, she pays attention to everything you do and she mimics everything you do.
She's 22 months old. So to put her on the boat and work with me, all the sharp edges and whatnots, I put them up high, so of course she doesn't get to them. But she'll take my wrench, take my bag of tie wraps and flip them all over the place. It's an adventure.
Another issue, when we pulled the pie plate off underneath the leaning post to look at the wiring, we found out that the wires came directly down the center of the console and they all laid on top of the fuel tank. I'm not a real good fan of wiring laying on top of a fuel tank because for the same issue that he had in the back of the boat, if one of those wires decided to melt, you really don't want it melting on top of your fuel tank.
You have to give them a spot to where they're off the fuel tank and going into a rigging tube. Just one little ignite, it's sitting on a fuel tank. Boom!
The hardest part was trying to pull them out because everything was run kind of haphazard and at different times, so everything was kind of tangled around each other. You would pull a wire, and at the other end you couldn't feel that wire. You were pulling a whole harness. And so what we ended up doing was we would cut one wire at a time, go to the midpoint, and see if we could isolate it. Once we isolated it there, we cut it again, and then we could pull it in from the console. And we basically did that wire by wire until we got everything out of there.
Battery cables were butt connected. I mean, there was just so many things going on with this boat. I mean, 4 butt connectors within 18 inches. So we pulled all the wires out of it.
Well, I'm happy we finally got all this stuff pulled out of this boat, because this was one of the worst, it was actually the worst rigging job I've ever seen in my life. But now that we have that all done, we're gonna go ahead and get this thing, rewired and replumbed, and turn Debbie loose on the wiring, and I'm sure this guy's gonna be happy with this boat. And it's definitely gonna be safer.
When we come back, the crew at L&H custom fabs parts for the brand new 43 build. This segment brought to you by Two Rivers Boatworks. Exceptional design, quality, and craftsmanship.
Dreaming of transforming your boat into the envy of the fleet? The experts at Two Rivers Boatworks are dedicated to customizing your boat to your specific needs and personality. Specializing in fiberglass and composites repair, professional painting, systems installation, and more. Founded by boating enthusiasts, we understand the enjoyment of being on the water, offering exceptional design, craftsmanship, and quality, so you can spend more time on the water than dreaming about it. Visit our facility in Stuart, Florida, and turn your boating dreams into reality.
Welcome back to Florida Sportsman, Project Dreamboat. Join us as the team at L&H gets crafty, designing parts from scratch for their all-new 43.
We just started working on the 43 walk-around, the L&H 43 walk-around. One of the projects that we did start and we're working on right now is new air vents for the boat. The boat, again, is larger. The engines are larger. These are 600 horsepower Cummins engines, so they need to be supplied more air. The typical vents that we use on our 33 weren't going to be large enough. But again, in trying to keep the boat look very similar in style and appearance, we wanted to go with a vent that's going to look similar to what we used on the 33. So that's how we settled on what kind of look we're going to use for this vent. And in the process of making a mold, you have to produce what's called a master or a plug. And that is basically the three-dimensional shape of what you're going to be making the mold of. We had to create the teardrop shape, which was just simply drawn up. We decided what we liked, what looked good. That was just done with just molding. That's made with just a simple molding. In this case, we used 3/4 inch PVC, straight carpentry techniques, shaping, routering, and just create the ring that will be the outside ring of the vent when it's completed. And then we take that teardrop shaped door skin pattern that we had, transfer that mark onto the louvers, and cut that shape out so that it fits within the ring of the vent that we're making. Once the teardrop shape has been cut out and fit into the outside ring of the air vent, it was all epoxy glued together. And then we bring that back to the glass shop, and Lucio is going to take care of fairing and smoothing it.
Before the mold can be built off the template, first, a tan-based coat primer is sprayed on thick to fill all voids while providing a soft surface that can be easily sanded. Next, a finish coat of gray surface primer is sprayed on. This coat is a much finer finish that is wet sanded and then buffed to a polished finish. Now that the template is prepped, it's time to build the mold. Multiple coats of tooling wax and PVA, polyvinyl alcohol, are applied to ensure that the mold has a clean separation from the template. Once dry, the gel coat can be applied. An international orange tooling gel coat is used specifically for molds because it can handle much more heat than a normal marine gel coat. It's sprayed on twice as thick, so that when the mold is separated, it can be wet sanded and buffed to its final finish without thinning the gel coat. Once the gel coat is dry, it's time to do the skin out. First, a mix of Cavasil and orange tooling gel coat is used to fill corners and tight edges. Then the first layer of 1.5 ounce mat is carefully applied, and all air bubbles are pushed out using the fiberglass roller. Time is taken on this step to ensure a perfect bond between the gel coat and fiberglass. 2 layers are done per day, finishing with 6 layers total. Next, foam is poured into all louvers and spaces to ensure the mold keeps its original shape. The foam is ground down and then sealed with 2 more layers of fiberglass. Once the fiberglass is dry, a frame is built and glassed on to support the mold. This allows for easier removal and shop use. Once the piece is fully cured, it's time to pop the mold. Multiple wedges are used around the edges to slowly separate the mold from the template. With the mold separated, the residual PVA is cleaned off and the mold is wet sanded and buffed to a polished finish. Now you have a finished mold that will last for many years to come. The process for making a vent off of this mold is almost identical to the mold process. Wax and PVA are applied to the mold to ensure the vent separates. Then the gel coat is brushed into tight spaces and sprayed on at a normal thickness. Once dry, it's ready for a skin out with 1.5 ounce mat. This is still the most important step by ensuring the mat is sealed to the gel coat with no air pockets. This piece will have 4 layers of mat and will be about 3/16 of an inch thick. Once cured, it's popped off the mold. The louvers are cut out with a router and the edges are lightly sanded. Finally, the vent is primed and painted to match the whisper gray interior color of the boat. It's a long process, but these custom accents are what make these boats one of a kind.
All right, yeah, the air vents came out really good. We're getting ready to put them and install them on the boat. We're still back into the interior, working away on that. Everything's starting to come together. It's still quite a construction zone, but we're really pleased with the way it's moving along.
When we return, George LaBonte joins Dreamboat owner Chris Fischetti aboard his custom 22-foot Pathfinder in this week's One Man's Dreamboat segment. This segment brought to you by Fiberglass Coatings, the largest selection of fiberglass materials in the United States.
FGCI is a leading supplier of composite materials, family-owned for over 60 years and headquartered right here in Florida. We have the materials and technical expertise to service manufacturers, repair professionals, and DIYers alike. Our gel coat color matching is a favorite of seasoned professionals and weekend warriors. Access our online store at fgci.com, call to speak with a product specialist, or visit our stores in Fort Lauderdale or St. Petersburg. FGCI is your partner on boat projects big and small.
Welcome back to Florida Sportsman Project Dreamboat. Join us for this week's One Man's Dreamboat segment with Florida Sportsman boating editor George LaBonte as we feature anglers who have already launched their dream. Florida Sportsman began these features 30 years ago, and the dreams just keep getting better.
A comment that we get a lot of on Project Dreamboat is, I could never afford a boat like that. I couldn't take on a project like that. These things are so expensive. How am I ever going to get a boat like this? Well, today we're in Fort Lauderdale, Florida to meet up with Chris Fischetti and have a look at his 2002 22-foot Pathfinder. Now, there's a very unique story behind how Chris found himself with the 22 Pathfinder, and it's a great example of the American dream.
I grew up racing motocross, and I've always been into motorcycles. The older I got, the more I started getting into Harleys and fixing them up, flipping them, selling them, making a little profit, and I wanted to get into boats. My dad's always been into boats, and it's something that I've always enjoyed. I've always been on the water, and I found a guy who wanted to trade. He was moving out of the state, so he was going to the Carolinas. He wanted a motorcycle. Found him on Craigslist, and he wanted to trade the Harley for the boat. Went over, looked at it. It was weathered. It needed some work. I figured, why not? I've done motorcycles. Why can't I do a boat? So traded title for title. I stripped it down, repowered it, repainted it, redid the whole exterior, redid the interior, all the no skid, inside all the gunnels, speakers, electronics, kind of the whole nine.
Now, with all the experience Chris gained building this Hughes boat, it was time for another project, and Chris found the perfect candidate, this 22-foot Pathfinder.
I sold the Hughes. I ended up doubling my profit on that, and then that's what I used to purchase this boat. So once I purchased the boat, as soon as I got it home, I started going through it, kind of trying to figure out what I was going to do with it. I had a vision in my head, but obviously once you get it home and you start messing with it and start doing little things here and there, I took the hatches off so I could do some fiberglass work on the hatches, prepped the outside of the boat. I wanted to do a darker color. I think they stand out, and I think black boats look really sharp. So kind of a unique scenario. I don't have a paint booth or anything. I took like a 10 by 20 carport and I draped visqueen down the side, and I made my own paint booth out of it. Wet sanded it down, buffed it, went through the whole thing, and I'm overall happy with the outcome of it. The original T-top was extremely wide. I don't think it was fit for that boat. I think the person who had it before me just put whatever T-top they could find for the best price. The new T-top's a lot sleeker. It's made for this boat. It's the proper fit. So I had the T-top powder coated, the leaning post powder coated. I had a custom made dash panel out of plexiglass. I had the Lowrance GPS depth finder cut out specifically for that, as well as the radio. So that way it was a nice custom look and it fit real nice in there. So I enjoy leisure boating as well as fishing, and I like the best of both worlds. So I did 4 JL 77s, I did a JL amp, and then a Fusion head unit, and rigged it all myself, wired it all up myself. Found the power pole. Again, everything's kind of pieced together where I can find it. I did not buy it brand new. I just repainted it to match the boat. On the other side, the dive platform, the newer Pathfinders have the nice dive platform. I found a person who had double power poles. They took the platform off a brand new boat. It lines right up with the lines and everything of the older style boats. So I repowered with a Yamaha 200 SHO. It originally had the 2002 VMAX on it, 2-stroke motor. I wanted something much better fuel economy, quiet. You don't have the smoke when you pull up to restaurants or anywhere, sandbars or anything like that. So just kind of, again, updating the boat to today's day. So every year we do an annual, it's like a family tradition. We'll make a keys trip, and then we also come down to Fort Lauderdale, Pembroke Pines area, and we'll do a kickoff of summer boat parade. We usually have 15 to 20 boats that come around, all family, friends and stuff, so it's a good time to kind of relax and enjoy everybody's presence and get ready for the summer.
Now, Chris's Pathfinder is a great example of how it doesn't take an over-the-top major transformation to build your own dream boat. With a few simple detail changes, Chris took this older 2002 kind of dated looking Pathfinder and brought it into 2020 and made it look like a new boat.
So overall, I'm extremely happy with the boat, the way it turned out. I think it looks night and day difference from the original to what it is now. Definitely looks a lot more modernized. I can definitely see myself doing another project like this. I'm looking for something a little bigger. Again, every little step of the way, I learn new things, learn new challenges, so I'm ready to take on my next project in the future.
After an initial investment of $15,000 and spending $10,000 on repairs and custom modifications, the cost of Chris's Dreamboat comes to a total of $25,000. When we return, the 25-foot Contender project at TRB is brought to the water for her final shakedown. This segment brought to you by Yamaha. Reliability starts here.
An entirely new species of extreme predator is moving offshore. The Yamaha 5.6-liter V8 XTO offshore outboard. Extreme big block thrust and power in the industry's first direct injection 4-stroke. Quiet, efficient, powerful, and proven Yamaha reliability. More than an outboard, it's a fully integrated power system. The all-new Yamaha V8 XTO Offshore.
Welcome back to Florida Sportsman, Project Dreamboat. Join the crew at TRB as they sea trial and deliver the freshly completed 25-foot Contender project.
So on the 25 Contender project, we've been involved with the boat so long on the cosmetic side of things. I almost forget about all the structural work we've done to the boat, you know, putting in new fuel tanks, reinforcing the center console, reinforcing the floor. There's just been so much work done to it. And then as work developed, I said, you know, Mike, this would be a great time to paint the boat. We've tried to keep the boat, the look of the boat as clean as possible with a new T-top, the way that we've positioned instruments, radios, all that sort of thing. The boat's about to go off on a sea trial, and I hope everything goes well and there's not too much to do so that Mike can come and collect his boat and get it out on the water and enjoy it. It's been a long time coming, and I hope he's happy, and this is possibly one of the nicest 25 Contenders out there at the moment.
So expectations for today are to get out on the water, start, programming some stuff, make sure the engines are running right, and just to get the boat back on the water and get everything, up to speed again.
I've never been on that boat with that power, so I didn't really know what to expect. But all in all, we went out, we ran the boat, tested the systems. The boat performed well, gets up on plane and goes. I think we ended up right at mid-50s.
I think the boat ran well. It definitely rides nice. It's got plenty of power. It gets up and goes. For what Mike's wanting to do on the boat, take it back and forth to the Bahamas, put his kids and family on the boat to do some fishing trips, I think it's going to be a perfect boat for him and his family. So after the sea trial went well, we brought the boat back to the shop. We're going to call the owner, Mike. He's been here throughout the whole process along the way. So he knew exactly what he wanted, and I think when he first saw the boat, he was really happy to see that it actually came through that way.
So yeah, it's red now, and on the inside of the console there's a controller that you can...
This can change colors?
Yeah,
oh, wow.
You can change it any color you want. I know you wanted it to be red, so we made sure that it definitely had some red, and then if you want to change it throughout the night or whatever, you can.
Yeah, man, looks really good.
From what the boat was when it got dropped off to the condition, the way that it's wired and it looks now, it's complete 180 from where it was when it got dropped off.
Cool. Yeah, it looks good, man. It's clean.
You can crawl in there, but like all the wiring and everything's, I don't know what it looked like before, but I know it didn't look like that.
Yeah, no, this was more, it was more in your face. It wasn't tucked up on the side, it was up here.
Right.
Once we were done going over the boat with Mike, he was super happy with everything. He decided to take delivery of the boat. Now he's back out on the water using his boat and having a great time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just really excited. It's summertime now. We started this project, in I would say fall/winter of last year. So, it took a while, but, like anything, to do things right, it takes time. So I think I'm just excited to have it back, and it came out really well.
It's a super, super clean boat. Fresh mercury power, brand new fuel tanks, and Birdsall crushed it with the pipework. And we got the hardtop painted and the dash panel. There's not too many of those out there that are like that. And I think between all parties, it wouldn't be what it is if we didn't have everyone involved.
Guys have put in a lot of hard work. I think Mike is super happy with the way that the boat came out, but I am ready to get the boat out of the shop so that we can get another one in and start another project.
Next week on Florida Sportsman, Project Dreamboat, Stewart Boatworks begins designing a brand new shallow water skiff. George LaBonte joins Tony Eden aboard his extremely customized 31-foot Contender. The technicians at TRB take on repairing a hurricane-damaged Hydrosports. And we take a ride on the custom L&H 33 built for country legend Alan Jackson.